let's move over to the other side of the garage then, because then you've got George Russell, who we've seen have a couple of really big wins this season. How would you describe his character and looking ahead to next season, where he's going to be stepping up to be the team's number one driver? Do you think there's a potential world champion right there in George Russell in the future?
I'm very impressed by George. I think he has absolutely the right mindset, and I think that there aren't many drivers who can step into that car on the other side of the garage from Lewis Hamilton and not feel slightly in awe or slightly cowed. He absolutely doesn't. I think he's worked hard on the mindset, which is what happens on the other side of the garage is not my concern. My concern is this side of the garage. I am, racing to the very best of my abilities, and I'm doing everything that I can to do that. So when you talk to him about that aspect, what's it like to be, teammates with the 7 times world drivers champion? He's very focused on his own performance, and it's very impressive to be that focused. There are no compromises with George. He's there to race. He's there to prove himself, and he backs himself in his own words. I back myself, and he said that a few times, and I think that it has to start there. It has to start with the driver believing that he can do it. I think if you get that slightest doubt, you're out. So now he's got this opportunity to step up. He's got a younger teammate coming in, but my impression of the drivers at Mercedes is that they're very much on an equal standing, despite the achievement, the independent achievements or individual achievements of the drivers, or the experience, or whatever level it is. They are regarded as on an equal pegging in terms of an engineering briefing or a debrief. The engineers want to hear from them both. They want to hear from them both on equal terms. And if one driver wants to go off in a slightly different setup direction, that's for that side of the team to work it out. Likewise on the other side. So I never really saw any kind of hierarchy of drivers within the team, and I think that's how it should be, really, just to keep that equality going.
Looking ahead to next year, then George will have a new teammate in Andrea Antonelli, who will be one of the youngest drivers on the grid next season. What do you make of that move from Mercedes to bring him in to be George's teammate next season?
I think they're very aware of his youth. They're also equally aware of his potential. I think that there is the support network around Kimi is phenomenal, and it's not just about as a driver, but as a young man who's going to be stepping into some very big shoes. But he's got to establish himself as a driver, and not just the replacement for Lewis Hamilton. So there's a great deal of care and attention going into that, and I think that they just want to give him the space and the focus and the support to show what he can do.
And you mentioned about the team being aware of his potential, but also aware of his youth. And there is speculation that Valtteri Bottas could be coming in to be the team's reserve driver from next season. So do you think that's potentially why they're looking to maybe go down that road, so that Antonelli has got that experienced head in Bottas to talk to and get some words of wisdom from, I suppose, in his debut season in F1?
I think that there's a great deal of wisdom washing around the garage in Mercedes F1, and it doesn't just come from the drivers. It comes from the engineers, the mechanics. They've all been around, and it is very much. I wanted to describe it as a family, and when I put that to Toto, he absolutely refuted it and said, "We're not a family, we're a tribe." And I kind of understand what he means by that. It's I think a tribe is like a family on a war footing, I suppose you could say. And so they are this tribe, and they will close around Kimi, and they will give him all the support he needs and all the space that he needs to make this work. And if he needs to talk to a reserve driver, if he needs to talk to George, they will be there. They are racing as a team, as they are this year with Lewis. As I say, my experience of witnessing the team is that they are racing as one. There's no sort of favoritism on one side or the other at all.
Well, lastly, Ben, you mentioned Toto there. What is it about him that makes him so impressive? Because those who will have watched F1 and will have watched the Netflix series Drive to Survive will have seen the various ding-dongs he's had with the likes of Christian Horner and some of those other principals down the years. What was it like getting access to him and seeing him leading this team?
So my first exposure to Toto was in the garage at the Bahrain Grand Prix during qualifying, and that was my first time in the garage, and I was sort of positioned right behind him, just up against the tool cabinet, about a meter back from where he sits, on that sort of central engineers island. And I was advised, just stay there and don't move. And you kind of can't really move in the pit garage because space is at a premium and the mechanics are wandering around with tire trolleys, and you do have to kind of watch your footing and just keep out of the way, breathe in a bit. And during qualifying, it became very, very clear that Mercedes were off the pace by about 0.6 of a second. And for the team, it was the end of the world. As I said, it was just, it hadn't worked out. So when I first saw them in the briefing, they still had a week to go to try and iron out what they saw as teething troubles. But then clearly that hadn't worked. And at the end of qualifying, everyone in the garage melted away. The mechanics went off to parc ferme, the engineers went off for the debrief, and very quickly I found myself alone in the garage with Toto, because Toto was just sitting on his stool looking at the data on the screen. I don't think he was aware that I was right behind him, but in that moment I got to see a team principal facing a very, very harsh reality, and he looked like he was carrying that weight on his back. He just stared at it for a couple of minutes and then eventually got off the stool, rolled his sleeves up, stepped outside and did the Toto in front of the cameras, giving his response thing and basically, backing the team. And then from that moment on, Toto effectively had to kind of galvanize. He had to be the sort of lightning rod for the team to remind everyone of the vision, that this is what we're aiming for. And we've got to be true to ourselves. We've got to just double down and get ourselves back on the front foot. And that's effectively what he did throughout the 23 season, which was a frustrating season for everyone. I think it's slightly lost in the whole sort of the narrative of Max winning again, was that Mercedes started way off the pace at the start of 23, but they finished second in the constructors, and they really did fight tooth and nail for every point in order to get there. And I think that Toto deserves a lot of credit for that. I mean, he said to me that he doesn't, but I feel he does, because he was present at every single engineering briefing and debriefing. He gets involved in every aspect without interfering. So by his own admission, he's not an engineer, he's not an aerodynamicist, he's not a tire expert, but he will listen to all the conversations that are going on and just draw kind of concluding points that steer the team towards this ultimate goal of getting back on the front foot. So he's very driven, but we all know that. He's incredibly competitive. I felt that he was almost physically pained by what had happened to the team last year. I could see it in his face, to the point where he had an operation on his knee, I think shortly before the Japanese Grand Prix. And I had wondered, when I'd last seen him prior to that, whether he was actually in pain because of his knee. Because when I'd seen him in the motorhome, he looked uncomfortable. And I asked him, and he refuted it completely. He said, "I don't feel pain during a race weekend. It's purely down to the team." He's just very visceral. This losing is something that is clearly painful to him, and at the same time he has to maintain this guiding force to get the team back to the front of the grid. When that happens, we haven't got a crystal ball, but I think he is well placed to ensure that every component of Mercedes F1 is locked together and working as one towards building this all important momentum that will finally push the team, or any team really, in the paddock. That seems to me how it works.
Well, Matt, thank you so much for joining us on the talkSPORT Driving YouTube page. Matt's book, Inside Mercedes F1 Life in the Fast Lane, is available from now. You can find the link to purchase it in the description from this video. And yeah, looking forward to another exciting season of F1 next year. And hopefully we might see Mercedes back towards the front of the grid.
Thanks for having me.